Number 5. World War III. In his big book of predictions known as his quatrains, Nostradamus wrote that 7 months the Great War, people dead of evil doing. Rowan Evru shall not fall to the king. Now if you've watched any of our videos on Nostradamus, you'll know that he usually keeps his predictions pretty vague and cryptic, as a centuries-old mystic astrologer is wont to do. But here he's treating us to a prediction so easy to read, even I can follow along. Nostradamus predicts that there will be a great war, and that if the quatrain is anything to go off of, Europe will be the theater for the conflict. But in a small hope spot for the city of Rouen, France, they are not going to fall to the king. Good for them. That's the only city he specified is going to be okay. Now who could this king be referring to? A world leader? An army maybe? The mascot for Burger King? I know if any fast food mascot is going to start a world war, it is absolutely that guy, although Grimace has always been a wild card. Don't trust him even a little bit. Now obviously, jokes aside, this is a tense subject. The current situation in Europe is already a cause for serious global stress, and no one wants to see it develop any further, especially into a great war. Although that's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? I'm not sure if great is the right word to describe any wars. Maybe in size, sure, but I don't think anyone involved in an international war would describe it to you as a great time. The quatrain doesn't specify when, but with the world watching Europe now, it's definitely on the back of all of our minds that we hope this doesn't come true. Let's take a break from bumming each other out talking about global conflicts. You having fun with the channel? Toss a subscribe our way to catch it all. Number 4. Asteroids. A great fire will fall from the sky for 3 nights. The cause will appear both stupefying and marvelous. Shortly afterwards, there will be an earthquake. Ever since a big rock wiped out the dinosaurs, I think it's been a little bit on the back of our minds worrying that maybe something like that might happen to us someday. If something is going to stop a T-Rex, I don't even feel a little bit confident about my odds. This quatrain here makes it seem like we've got to be watching the skies. And while I certainly hope this is just Nostradamus referring to the world's best 4th of July celebration and a whole long weekend fireworks session, people who spend a whole lot more time than me reading about Nostradamus theorize that this could be referring to an asteroid strike on our sweet blue planet, which is going to be both stupefying and marvelous, which honestly sounds very, very nice were it not for the earthquake. Lucky for us, and terrible for extinction event enthusiasts, sorry, our good friends at NASA have recently demonstrated their DART technology, short for Double Asteroid Redirection Test. And I gotta wonder how many acronyms they tried before landing on that one, because DART sounds so clean. It's a system in place to change the trajectory of asteroids. Successfully, no less. Just a few weeks ago, for the first time in humanity's history, we changed the path of a celestial object. So take that, Nostradamus. Bet you didn't predict we were gonna go to space to push something out of the way. And hey, asteroids? You think you're so tough? Well, take that, never-ending cosmos and unending might of the eternal stars. We're just gonna push you right out of the way. We don't care. Number 3, celestial fire. And before we move forward, we really gotta think of a nickname for this guy. Nostradamus is just a mouthful and a half. Mussy? No, that's way worse. Okay, never mind. We're just gonna keep calling him Nostradamus for now. You know what, if you ghouls and goblins can think of a good Nostradamus nickname, throw that down in the comments, because I am spending so much time saying this guy's name. Our favorite Farsi and Frenchman with no good nicknames wrote in his big book of predictions that there will be a celestial fire on the royal edifice. So what does that mean for us? What is a celestial fire if not a Destiny 2 melee ability? Warlocks are going to dominate a new Crucible map? It's unlikely, as Nostradamus' predictions on Destiny's meta have frequently been inaccurate, and most historians believe he actually would have played a Voidwalker instead of a Dawnblade. Experts in transcribing Nostradamus' work believe that this excerpt from his poetry could be referring to the destruction of the royal palace, with many believing it to refer to the royal family in the UK. So should King Charles put a big fireproof umbrella over Buckingham Palace? Some have suggested that this could be far more dramatic, referring to Buckingham Palace being completely destroyed and from its ashes a new power rising. The prophet continues to say that an unlikely alliance will occur of 2 great powers that will come together. Now, who would this new world order be? Benevolent, to lead us to a new golden age, or dark new overlords to oppress us all? It's always a possibility that it could be reptile people. Number 2, man-eating? No abbots, monks, no novices to learn. Honey shall cost far more than candle wax. So high the price of wheat, that man has stirred his fellow man to eat in his despair. Now, at first, this seems like the ramblings of an old man who just came back from Walmart and saw the price of honey and is going off on a tirade. But that little snippet about man eating his fellow man sticks out just a little bit, doesn't it? This prediction is pretty directly doomsaying, with our good friend and master of mysticism, Nostradamus, suggesting that in the future, things are going to get so bad that food is going to become so expensive that the common fella won't be able to afford any honey, wheat, or Honey Nut Cheerios, and will be pushed in desperation to start eating his fellow man. There really was not a lot going on back then if the scariest thing he could think of was honey getting so expensive that it would cause a full-on societal breakdown and cause us all to start eating man. You think they're gonna sell that in grocery stores? Obviously this one is a bit drastic as far as his predictions go, and definitely a bit scary unless you're the kind of person that watches The Walking Dead and wishes, gosh, I wish that was me. And if you are, you should probably talk to someone, they just want to help. But there is some truth to this. Prices of basic groceries are going up and up every year. I mean, you can walk into the Walmart and see the price of honey yourself, with inflation creeping its ugly little head a little more each year. It's been a consistent concern as well that bees are going to go extinct in our lifetime, with the population of honeybees declining rapidly yearly. For our sake, and the bees, we need to do something to save the planet, if not just for the ecosystem and the planet as a whole, but also because apparently if we run out of honey, that's the first thing that causes us to all start going Texas Chainsaw Massacre on each other. Number 1. Great Discord. The trumpet shakes with great discord, an agreement broken, lifting the face to heaven. The bloody mouth will swim with blood. The face anointed with milk and honey lies on the ground. Like most of Nostradamus' writings, this one sounds a bit like the opening monologue to one of the Lord of the Rings movies. And wow, hey, honey again. Honey was a really serious cause of concern for this guy. I think if nothing else, Nostradamus took his morning tea incredibly seriously. So besides crying over spilled milk and honey, what do the experts have to say about this one? Was Nostradamus banned from his Discord server and writing out against the tyrannical mods? Well, like most of the predictions on this list, this unnerving quatrain seems to suggest that dire violence will plague us, with unrest between the classes leading to full-scale rebellion and riots. This little ditty seems to support that, with Nostradamus writing that sooner and later you will see great changes made, dreadful horrors and vengeances. Well, I don't know about you, but I support great changes definitely, though I'm a little less sure about dreadful horrors and vengeances. The last few years have seen more civil unrest than ever, with it seeming like there's a mass-scale protest or riot every couple of weeks somewhere in the world. It's easy to flick on the news and see that and wonder if it's eventually going to hit a boiling point, and when it does, if we'll see some serious changes, or at the very least, some positive progress towards the price of honey. Because I'm really not looking to get eaten by anyone anytime soon. I'm just, look at me, I'm so twiggy, I will barely even make a good snack. Just pass me over, okay? Number 5, President Trump. This is probably the most famous prediction attributed to America's favorite family, and you gotta admit it's a little bit kooky. So let's just get it right out of the way so we can do the rest of the video. In the season 11 episode, Bart to the Future, we get a glimpse into one of the many possible future timelines for the Simpsons family. It's a pretty good episode. The family has a picnic disturbed and stops off at a nearby casino. Bart sneaks on in and is caught by the manager, who wants to show him a vision of his future if he keeps up his nefarious ways. It's pretty depressing. Bart grows up to be a loser slacker who's roommates with Ralph, and Lisa grows up to be president of the United States. And she's doing a pretty good job, managing with all the troubles left behind from President Trump. Wait, when did this episode air? 2000? 2000, okay, oof. Now obviously this episode gained a ton of notoriety and popularity after 2016, and I wonder why. All because of a throwaway joke. Obviously the creative team had to speak out on this one. Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, said that he never thought he'd actually become president. Dan Greaney, writer for the show and the writer of that joke in question, offered this in an interview saying, "It just seemed like the logical last stop before hitting bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going insane." No comments. This prediction even gets referenced much later on in the series. An episode from season 28, airing 4 days after the inauguration, has Bart writing on the chalkboard, "It sucks being right sometimes," obviously alluding to the controversial president's election. Now, you've probably seen an image passed around the net too of Trump descending an elevator looking exactly like a real picture of the 45th. Well, the Simpsons are good, but they're not that good. Now, the first joke we mentioned is from 2000, but that picture that you've probably seen an uncle share on Facebook all the time is from a digital webisode from 2015, around the time the campaign was happening. So they only predicted it the once. And that's probably enough. Now, if you're a big Top 5 Scary fan, you know I love predictions. All the greats. Nostradamus, Baba Vanga, Homer Simpson. And I predict that you'll keep subscribing for scary videos hot and fresh every day. Let's keep on going. Number 4. Disney buying Fox. While maybe this one is only terrifying if you're afraid of corporate conglomerates. In the 1998 episode, When You Dish Upon a Star, through a series of contrivances, Homer crashes through the window of Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, and ends up becoming friends with the stars, rubbing elbows with a few Hollywood alums, including Ron Howard, beloved Hollywood director and narrator from Arrested Development. Over the course of the episode, Homer desperately tries to get Ron to produce his screenplay, a masterpiece about a scary robot driving instructor that travels through time for some reason or another, and a talking pie that's the robot's best friend. Now, all this is a bit of a preamble because the prediction comes right at the end of the episode, in a blink and you'll miss a joke. When Ron Howard does end up pitching Homer's script, we see a sign on the 20th Century Fox building that says a subdivision of the Walt Disney Company, a full 21 years before Fox would be absorbed into Disney. Now, showrunner Al Jean tried to downplay this. When someone asked him about it, he said, "Predictions? I predict that people will make far too much of that mere coincidence." Which I guess he is, right? Because here I am, talking about it now to you. But if he predicted that, and he's right about that, then is he trying to downplay the other predictions? How did you know, Mr. Jean? Did a wizard do it? Now, on another note, I think this is kind of funny. But if you want to watch The Simpsons online, you have to go to Disney Plus, since that's where the entire series is streaming. And on Disney Plus, there's a subcategory called Simpsons Predicts, which was very helpful for this episode. It's a playlist of all the episodes attributed to Have a Little Soothsaying. All the episodes I mentioned are going to be on that list if you want to brush up after the video, including When You Dish Upon a Star. I think it's kind of a funny coincidence that they include an episode based on a 1-second frame predicting that Disney will buy Simpsons on their collection of things Simpsons predicted on their Disney website. Okay, I'm rambling like I'm Abe Simpson. Number 3, tobacco. Now, like I was saying, I wore an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. Oh, sorry, I'm still rambling. Our next prediction from The Simpsons is kind of a cheat because the person in question was directly inspired by the episode, but the context is terrifying and hilarious enough. In the season 11 episode, E.I.E.I. Annoyed Grunt, after becoming obsessed with the concept of dueling, Homer goes around challenging just about everyone in Springfield until he crosses the rich Texan, who actually accepts Homer's duel. Terrified, he flees to his childhood farmstead and decides to begin life anew as a rural farmer. But after having some trouble growing anything, he asks Lenny and Carl for a little plutonium, and he kickstarts a crop he calls tobacco, a rancid combination of tobacco and tomatoes. Now, the joke here obviously is that is disgusting, and no one in their right mind would ever want to eat that, but never underestimate a dedicated fan base, because in 2003, scientist Rob Barr wanted to grow his own tobacco, and the absolute madman actually did it. He claims what he initially grew he thinks would have been completely inedible and lethal for humans to eat. Why did he do this? Well, the answer is honestly a lot more earnest than you might think. He's just a massive fan of The Simpsons, and this episode was one of his all-time favorites. He loved the anti-smoking message, and he was curious if a dumb pun was possible to grow into a real plant, and it totally was. He even sent off one of his tobacco plants to the writing team responsible for the episode, and as a reward, he was even brought on to do DVD commentary of the episode after growing it, elevating himself to Simpsons superfan status. And I cannot imagine that they tasted good. Number 2, the NSA, and Tom Hanks a little bit. Okay, take your brain back to 2007. Remember the Simpsons movie? Absolute classic. Basically, just 2 hours of The Simpsons on fire. Some of the best jokes they've ever had, taking the show we love to its biggest extremes. After Springfield's toxic waste problem becomes too much to bear on the rest of the country, President Schwarzenegger, and don't worry, that's not the prediction, decides that the best solution is to place a big glass dome over the city of Springfield to contain the problem. The Simpsons escape and find themselves on the run. Now funny enough, in this scene, Bart takes a dig at Disney, wearing a bra on his head to look like Mickey Mouse, and saying he's the symbol of an evil corporate overlord. If only he knew. Marge is talking to Lisa about how they need to get to Seattle to tell everyone of the plot to destroy Springfield, and Lisa shushes her mom, warning her not to speak so loudly because people could be listening in. Well, Marge reassures her that no one is listening, until it's revealed that a dummy conductor has been listening and broadcasting the entire conversation to the NSA. Now, government surveillance was already a pretty popular conspiracy around the time the movie was made, but after the revelations of 2013, when it came out that the NSA was in fact doing that exact thing on the general population, a funny joke now seems prophetic. There's another prediction in the Simpsons movie that matches up pretty amusingly well with our real world. Near the end of the film, Tom Hanks films a promotional video for the US government and says, "The US government has lost its credibility, so it's borrowing some of mine." Pretty funny joke featuring America's dad. But then, in 2022, this basically happened like for actual real, when the current administration ran an anniversary campaign ad featuring Tom Hanks narrating the events of the first year of the Biden administration. Everyone raced to Twitter to comment that, yep, Simpsons did it first. The Simpsons had hit the nail on the head once again. Number 1, Siegfried and Roy. Now, some of our younger viewers might not even have any idea who these guys are. Maybe you're like me and you kinda know who they are through pop culture osmosis more than you do as real icons. Most specifically The Simpsons. The season 5 episode, Springfield with a $, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, centers around Mr. Burns' plan to dominate Springfield's wharf after the town legalizes gambling in a way to revitalize its economy. It's probably a top 5 episode for me. There's just so many good bits in this one. From Homer singing about Marge's gambling demon to Mr. Burns going all Howard Hughes with the Spruce Moose and Homer's hilariously bad Florida costume for Lisa, and the Siegfried and Roy parody, Gunther and Ernst. The pair of German performers are a clear-as-day stand-in for Siegfried and Roy, the famous Las Vegas big cat performing duo. Now in the episode, Gunther and Ernst joke that their tiger, Anastasia, loves her new life in show business compared to the wilds of the jungle. And we get a quick flash cut to Anastasia sleeping happily before she's apprehended by the duo. The scene cuts back and Anastasia sicks herself on the duo, tearing them apart. It was a pretty quick throwaway joke at the expense of 2 very minor Simpsons side characters, but in 2003 it became unfortunately tragic when an extremely similar incident would happen to the real-life inspiration. During a show, a tiger manticore attacked Roy critically, leaving him with a stroke and unable to ever perform again. No word on if the real duo ever saw the Simpsons episode. Now, the writing team for the episode commented on the unfortunate coincidence, saying they had no idea that it would ever actually happen, but stated that it was bound to happen eventually. As it stands, it's now a bit of a lip-biting moment in an otherwise absolutely classic episode. Number 5, The Queen and the Royal Family.
A golden thread running through the generations. That's how one of Queen Elizabeth II's many prime ministers described her reign, the longest in British history.
One of the most concerningly accurate predictions our boy Michelle predicted was that in 2022, Queen Elizabeth would pass and her son would take her place, but abdicate his position. In his original writings in 1555, Nostradamus wrote, "At the end of the war, the great powers change. Near the shore, 3 beautiful children are born, ruin to the people when they are of age, to change the country's kingdom and see it grow no more. The children are Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip's grandchildren, Prince William, Henry, and Princess Beatrice. The conflict could refer to the 1982 Malvinas War between the UK. Princess Diana gave birth to William 7 days after the war ended. Could Nostradamus be claiming that the end of Queen Elizabeth could be the end of the monarchy? Well, another writing of his adds to that. Check this out. Because they disapproved of his divorce, a man who later they considered unworthy, the people will force out the king of the islands, and a man will replace him who never expected to be king." Now, if you're like me and you struggle a bit to decipher centuries-old riddles, there are experts like Mario Reading, a British author, to do it for us. Reading explains the thinking, writing that after the Queen's death, Prince Charles will be crowned and become king of the islands. That part's already happened. However, a certain proportion of the British population, following his divorce from Diana, still persists that the pressure on him is so great and his age so much against him that Charles will agree to abdicate in favor of his elder son, Prince William. So it sounds like before he was even born, Nostradamus could sense that no one wanted King Charles. That obvious, huh? Hey, here's a prediction from me. By the end of this video, you'll subscribe to Top 5 Scary for scary videos every day and the best hosts in the game. I got a strong feeling I'm right. Here's an ominous one for you.
Humans, it says, are without doubt responsible for global warming and will pay an ever-increasing price. That includes more of what we've already seen this year: parched fields, forests on fire, and deadly heat.
Like the sun, the head shall sear the shining sea. The Black Sea's living fish shall all the boil. When Rhodes and Genoa half-starved shall be, the local folk to cut them up shall toil. Well, thankfully, we're not quite at the point of literal boiling fish in the sea, but that's not to say we're not rapidly approaching that reality. It's easy to interpret like the sun, the head shall sear the shining sea as a warning for the increasing rise in temperatures we've seen across the globe this year. 2022 has already been a record-breaking year for climate change, and not in a way that's particularly good for anybody. July of 2022 was one of the hottest months globally, among the top 10 hottest in global history. But it's fine, I'm sure. We just need to walk to work a little bit more, use paper straws, and we'll really get a handle on this thing. The death of coral reefs, eradication of natural habitats, and the worrisome decline in fish populations worldwide could all point to Nostradamus being right about this one, predicting boiling fish and the common folk starving. Not trying to scare you too much, but some experts predict that if we keep going at the rate we're at, the world's oceans could be totally empty of all fish by 2048. For my own sake, I sincerely hope Nostradamus is wrong about us in this one, because if I'm ever at a pub and I can't get a clam chowder or fish and chips, I just don't know that any of this will be worth it anymore. Number 3. Man, did this guy only ever predict depressing stuff? Could he not have just predicted just once that maybe it would be beautiful weather year round, the Leafs would have a good season, and the McRib would come back? No, sadly it was mostly doom prophecies. Check this one out. No abbots, monks, no novices to learn. Honey shall cost far more than candle wax. So high the price of wheat that man is stirred, his fellow man to eat in despair. International political instability, the pandemic, and Brexit have all contributed pretty nefariously to inflation. And let me tell you, as a guy who struggles to balance his checkbook, it has been a nightmare finding cheap honey. I'm serious, go on Amazon right now. Google raw honey and candle wax. Of all the things for a sage to be completely accurate on, I wasn't expecting it to be the economics of honey and wax, but hey, it's real. This is a personal issue I'm gonna have to set aside for now. But one has to wonder too with the phrase, his fellow man to eat in despair. Did Nostradamus have some insight into the popularity of the Eat the Rich movement? Well, that's always been a popular thing to spray paint over a bank wall or write on a poster board to take to a protest. After the pandemic, that sentiment has been more pronounced than ever in recent years, with large swaths of the population rightfully being upset about wage and income disparity that exists. It's hard enough for the common man to make a living out there, let alone being able to afford good, reliable honey. And if you know a supplier for that, drop a link please. My DMs are always open to talk honey. Number 2. If you asked me 5 years ago to predict what the future of finances would look like, I don't think I ever would have guessed the rise of NFTs or cryptocurrency. I mean, I don't think anyone could have estimated that we'd ever have an economy based around trading pictures of bored apes wearing sailor hats. Well, except of course Nostradamus could have predicted it, because he predicts everything. Could the French seer have predicted cryptocurrency? Take a quick listen to this. The copies of gold and silver inflated, which after the theft were thrown into the lake, at the discovery that all is exhausted and dissipated by the debt, all scripts and bonds will be wiped out. Recently, gold has been surging, and a whole wave and movement was born around moving towards cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, as a new infallible gold standard. Waves of Silicon Valley engineers and executives have left their high-level positions to pursue cryptocurrency startups, and the push to try and decentralize currency and move towards cryptocurrency has been very real in recent years and growing more and more. Could we really move away from physical cash altogether? Especially after the pandemic, we've seen more and more businesses and operations move towards cashless transactions altogether, moving towards all of our money being stored digitally, which stresses me out a lot because I have a hard time enough managing money when it's in front of me, let alone when it's imaginary. Maybe it's a lot to ask that Nostradamus could have predicted so much the idea of digital currency, but there's a lot to think about as ideas of a new form of currency taking shape. I've got to say though, if he really was as much of a prophet as they say he was, he would have invested in Bitcoin early, started seeing those real profits. Number 1. Keeping on his predictions about the technology of the future, could Nostradamus have predicted the rise of AI and the looming threat of a technological takeover? Honestly, more likely than you think. Feast your ear holes on this little stanza. The moon in the full of night over the high mountain, the new sage with a lone brain sees it, by his disciples invited to be immortal. Eyes to the south, hands in bosoms, bodies in the fire. Now, this does sound a little bit like something a wizard in a cave might whisper you over a crystal ball before sending you on a journey, but bear with it. Some experts firmly believe that this could be an allusion to the rise of the digital era. The new sage with a lone brain sees it by his disciples invited to be immortal. I don't want to stroke his ego too much by referring to them as sages, but Mark Zuckerberg has made it incredibly clear that he believes the future of the world and humanity as a whole is going to be virtual in his quest to create the metaverse, creating a world where literally the body will be left behind. Bodies in the fire, invited to be immortal. Do you think we could get to an era where we start living like we're in the Matrix, uploading our consciousness to a digital realm? What was once pure fantasy is encroaching on our reality closer and closer with each passing day, and I honestly think it'll be sooner than we're expecting before we're all living in that digital world.
Number 5 on this list is better than human robots. Humans are far from perfect. I think we can all agree on that. But up to this point, there hasn't been a single other species as intelligent or capable as humans have been. That's why we have effectively taken over the whole planet and have become the dominant species. We may not stay dominant for much longer if robots can become better than us though. Best Life says, a more immediate concern that will only be exacerbated in the decades to come is the phasing out of jobs and entire industries as artificial intelligence makes them obsolete. If we do not act promptly in anticipation of job disruption, we could experience a social catastrophe on a scale not seen since the Great Depression, predict Rohit Talwar, Steve Wells, and Alexandra Whittington, leaders of Fast Future, a professional foresight firm. Governments could be caught out by the pace and scale of automation through robotics and AI to such an extent that a sudden surge in unemployment leaves significant numbers of people without work and without the funds to provide for their families. They predict that such a situation would lead to all sorts of collateral issues such as increasing social unrest, tension related to the income inequality, a rise in criminal behavior in order to meet basic needs, and potentially violent backlash against government leaders and authorities. Robots don't need to come in with futuristic weapons and kill us all to do some serious damage to humanity. Just by letting us further develop them and then implement them instead of human workers, that's gonna do enough damage. I've read extensively on this topic before, and it is literally already happening right now. People are losing their jobs left, right, and center because robots are just simply cheaper and more efficient. Sooner rather than later, there are gonna be too many people unemployed by this, and the whole thing is gonna come crashing down. We've just gotta hope that by that time, the robots aren't smart enough to take over either. Number 4 on this list is rigged elections. Now this is something that's been going on for time, but don't expect it to leave us anytime soon. Best Life says, as technology has made voting easier in some parts of the world, it's also made voting systems more vulnerable to attack, and these threats are only likely to grow as we've seen in the efforts from Russians in the United States to most recent elections. Hacking an election in terms of changing actual votes is extremely risky for a nation state to do against the US, as it could lead to war, but for hacktivists and some organized crime groups, the risk may be worth it, says Jason Glassberg, co-founder of Casabas Security, a hacking firm that does extensive research and testing for the Internet of Things. At a minimum, expect to see ransomware and other cyber extortion targeting voting systems in the coming years. However, more dramatic attacks such as permanently crippling voting machines or forcing the machines to retabulate votes are also realistic. So it seems that rigged elections are only evolving and becoming trickier to detect, not leaving us behind like some would hope. We have this perception that our system is set in place and it's totally fair and democratic, but this just goes to show how off that perception is. So many factors that we don't know about go into an election, and our tiny little vote might not play that big of a role if some voting machine is casting millions for one candidate. It's all very slimy and sadly the reality of the world. Number 3 on this list is hijacked cities. So we don't live in Gotham and there's no evil Joker character coming to take over our town, so how would somebody hijack an entire city? Well, Best Life says, the dark side of our technological advancements is that we are also more vulnerable to attack. Glassberg points out to the recent ransomware attack on Atlanta that froze the city's systems, which eventually cost it $2.6 million for emergency response. We can expect to see more attacks like this in the coming years, particularly as city and county governments run a number of critical services which are often insecure and increasingly connected to the internet, says Glassberg. Since it's proven difficult to stop and prosecute these attacks, especially when they use simple tactics like ransomware, this is a very realistic scenario in the coming years as more criminal groups will hijack public services in order to demand large ransoms. Having all our cities run through tech has made our cities very advanced, but it's also made them very exploitable. The Atlanta example proves that some guy with a supercomputer across the world could completely bring the city to its knees. The government has even included this idea in warfare and has full-on task forces designed to target tech and things of this nature. Expect a lot more attacks like this moving forward as our tech continues to develop. Number 2 on this list is digital Big Brother. I am a big fan of the show Big Brother, one of my favorite reality TV shows actually. Would I love to participate on that show? Absolutely I would. Do I want to be monitored every second of my life though? Absolutely not. Best Life says, as AI becomes increasingly sophisticated, we will inevitably start to see applications in the security domain developed without further programming by humans, according to the Fast Future team. Whilst not quite to the level of Skynet at the heart of the Terminator movie franchise, the machines promise to be far more sophisticated in their approach than humans and to develop more complex algorithms they predict. Consequently, such developments will severely challenge our ability to understand, monitor, intervene, make changes, and exert control over our digital security bots. They expect that the surveillance and control these bots will have over our lives could increasingly infringe on our freedoms, giving a sense that robot overlords are watching us. I already feel like a robot overlord is watching me. Like anytime I say something that rhymes with Alexa and then my Alexa robot turns on, I realize that I'm being listened to all the time. Or when I mention one thing in passing to a friend, like, I don't know, I say that I really want to go golfing sometime soon, and then the next thing that I see on my Instagram account is ads for golfing. This Big Brother mentality is already happening right now, and it really isn't nice. Apparently, this is only going to become more and more invasive as time goes on. We won't be able to go to the bathroom anymore without some robot knowing about it and storing that information somewhere. And finally, number 1 on this list is extinct species. This one is truly very sad, and it's something that has been going on for decades. Global warming is a disaster. It is a man-caused disaster that is slowly eating the world, and it's gaining speed. The ice caps are melting at unprecedented rates, and before we know it, they will be completely destroyed. Not only will that destroy the habitats of tons of creatures that live by the ice, but it will also destroy the habitats of creatures in the ocean and destroy our cities because the ocean level will rise enough to flood them. The next 50 years is absolutely critical when it comes to climate change, and many experts think that we've already passed the place of no return. It's currently estimated that 1 million species will go extinct by 2050, and there literally isn't anything that we can do about it at this point. Reversing the effects of climate change takes time, and what we do now, we will see those results in 50 years. That number of 1 million species will only continue to rise and rise if change isn't actively enforced. And honestly guys, we might be part of that 1 million species.